welcome. Today we have invited Gus Gagliardi, fire engineer and podcast host. Welcome, Gus. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Hey, thank you for
Uh,
having me. Excited to be on the show.
so, obviously, the scope of this interview is for students and graduates to develop a career in fire by listening to the experience that other successful engineers in the industry have had. And on the other hand, we want our listeners to get to know you and get inspired by your story. Let's start with that. How did you start your career in fire protection engineering? Have you always wanted to be a fire engineer?
No, I went to Oklahoma State University I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't know I wanted to be a fire protection engineer. And so I went to school at Oklahoma State and I started off in chemical engineering. And chemical engineering was extremely hard. And I couldn't quite hack it at chemical engineering. And so I talked to my counselor about what degree program had a good job market and the ability to have, um, many jobs in my career and be able to, still pursue engineering. And he recommended fire protection engineering. And so my grandfather is a firefighter, so it was a easy call for me to say, yeah, that sounds interesting. And then yeah, that's how I got into the industry. I think that's a very common sentiment in the industry. People stumble in, or people have family members who are associated with it. And so, by and large, I think that's a big trend for people who find this profession.
Since we started this project, we've been speaking to quite a few fire professionals and we've learned lots of things. The next question, it's gonna sound like a no-brainer, but maybe we can find a deeper meaning to it. In your view, why is fire engineering important within the built environment?
Yeah, I think that fire engineering is one of those things that people don't think about. You might walk into a building and you don't look at the sprinklers or the fire alarm system or the passive fire protection within a building. And so this is a unseen bundle of safety for the public, for the building owner, for the community. This is the profession of what it means to be a fire protection engineer, taking the safety systems, the human behavior involved, and also the building characteristics, and looking at these things holistically and trying to develop a plan in order to have a reasonable level of safety for the all the stakeholders. So to me, I see it in that view. My wife always gives me trouble. Anytime we're walking in buildings, I'll be looking up at the sprinkler systems, looking at what's going on, or taking a look at the fire panel that's right by the door. But to me, it's very obvious that, you know, that we have research that says in buildings that are sprinklered, we have almost never had a human fatality. And so, um, we know that, yeah, that these are facts and, trying to advocate and get the word out about this subject and just talk to people about fire and life safety is something that I have a passion for. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
That's great. Because we are a recruiting agency, we've got the chance to speak to many engineers over the years, from graduate way over to CEO level. Actually, that's the main reason we started interviewing fire professionals. It's because we noticed that there is a shortage of fire engineers, first in the UK and in other markets like Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And I want to ask you if you notice that there is a shortage of fire engineers in the US market. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I was just at a career fair at the college that I graduated from this week, and there was a record turnout for employers at this engineering career fair. Sorry, gotta clear my throat 1 second.
Mhm.
But a record turnout for employers at this career fair, and I got to talk to my professors and talking about, the size of the program and the students coming out, and it's about the same. And so I think that right now there is such a huge market for professionals, not just in fire protection, but across the board in engineering. And I think that, the pandemic had kind of pushed people along in that they were going to retire, or maybe that they wanted to shift towards, part-time or a different work environment. And so I think it's a couple factors fold. It's, um, being able to produce qualified professionals, the influx of people leaving the industry, and then also, yeah, just that it's an incredible hot market for hiring professionals right now. So that's a couple of the reasons why I see that it is an extremely competitive job market right now for fire and life safety professionals. We're looking for interns next summer at the company that I work at, Rated Engineering, and it's very competitive. I mean, we talk to a number of students, and if you have really qualified candidates, they're going to be getting multiple looks from companies, and so it's a very competitive market.
Um, well, I think both you and us are trying to fill these gaps into the market, let's say. And now I would like to talk about a different topic about you. Gus, you have a podcast, Fire Tech Code, and you started this back in 2020. What was the motivation behind starting a podcast?
Yeah, so in 2020, I'd really been thinking about the podcast since about 2019, and I was thinking was about 2 to 3 years into my career, and I was wondering, like, I'm at a job, I really enjoy the company, but I wanted to learn more. I want to speak to more professionals. I want to extend my reach for, the community that I'm involved with. I'm involved in professional societies, but I feel like I've plateaued in the trajectory of what I'm learning. And so for me, I just wasn't okay with that. It was making me unsettled. I was thinking I just have to figure out a way to where I can talk to more people. And so I started the podcast selfishly and a little bit with an altruistic idea of like, hey, not only can I get the answers that I'm interested in, but I can spread those, answers and discussions and, help the community as well. So part of it was for me to seek out professionals who are knowledgeable, people who know how the business works, and who could help me fill that gap for my passion to figure out, how the industry works and to progress. And part of it was, I look at other industries like tech and, software development, and they have so many free resources and tools and things that, are available for any professional. And I just think, why can't we have that? Why aren't qualified professionals out there and making resources for people? And so for me, I put these two ideas of things that people were doing together already. That is not a novel idea to do a podcast. Many people do podcasts, but I just looked around in my industry and I said, why not me? And I guess I'm crazy enough to go out there and start posting. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Thank you for sharing this story that with us. And yes, you are absolutely right. Um, and also, we are curious to know what topics you discuss with your guests.
Yeah. So the podcast is a really wide variety of topics. I mean, we talk about everything from hazardous materials to fire alarm systems, fire sprinkler systems, fire water storage tanks, fire pumps, means of egress, life safety. I mean, pretty much if it has fire in the name, we'll probably talk about it. Fire hydrants, fire extinguishers, as a consulting engineer, I see, buildings ranging from aircraft hangars for Department of Defense down to, I was in an auditorium this week for a local public auditorium. And so my job, fire protection, is a beautiful industry in that it is so small that the consulting firms often see a very wide array of what the industry has to offer. And so, as somebody who's new in their career, you quickly get into an area where you're like, oh, is somebody an expert on this? This seems like a very specific topic. Auditoriums or, hazardous materials or aircraft hangars. These things seem very specific and they have challenges and hazards and pitfalls that I would love to be aware of. And so, yeah, I try to cover topics, a bunch of topics, maybe not as in depth as I would like to, but I plan to be doing the podcast for a bunch of more years, so I'm sure I'll get there, but pretty much anything you can imagine. Also, I've been covering more like drafting and 3D modeling topics lately, so that's a big, at the firm I work for, I do 3D drafting and modeling for construction documents, so that's something I have a personal interest in. So I've had a couple of guests who specialize in software development and automation recently. And so I think that's where the industry is trending towards more automated solutions. Um, for across the board, probably in any business you could think of is more automation solutions. So yeah,
Um, so basically, your podcast is like an audio book to the open public, so they can learn a
yeah.
lot of things. And I'm confident that you've also learned a lot from the discussions you had with your podcast guests. But did this conversation help you in any way in your field of expertise?
Yes, yes, I've learned so much and I've gained friends and mentors and just um, like tangible and intangible rewards from speaking with people on the podcast. Something specifically that I can think of is the codes and standards process in the US, how that works. And so it's a process of committees. It's a process that takes many years and it's very complex. And so as a young professional, I was like, who are the people that are in these committees? You know, and so I have had the opportunity to speak with people on NFPA and other committees for codes and standards development. That's one of the big processes I've learned more about, the legal jargon of how these standards get made and adopted and put through the cycle. And then, yeah, I think I've had the opportunity to speak with people like Michael Kilby at the Smithsonian Museum. He's the head fire protection engineer for the Smithsonian Museum. He's, one of the head fire protection engineers over hundreds of facilities. I mean, it's a global company, the Smithsonian Institute. And so it's been just so many topics and conversations that have pushed me along. I'm a totally different professional than when I started out 2 years ago. And so, yeah, I mean, on a weekly basis, I mean, I spoke with a young man from Costa Rica this weekend and got to talk to him about how the International Code Council or International Family of Codes is not adopted in Costa Rica. It's more NFPA based. And he was telling me about how, like, what certifications are important in his country. And so not only do I get to know about the US and how things work in the US, but Poland, Costa Rica, Australia. I'm speaking with you guys, like it's just so much fun to get to build that community and speak with people.
And you've mentioned some fire professionals, and I think that everyone has a mentor or someone that they admire or look up to in their professional life, in one form or another. And
Yep.
it's a good thing. So Gus, who has been your most important professional mentor? Do you have someone that you look up to?
I think that first and foremost, my dad and my brother are really big mentors for me. My dad is an engineer. He's the reason why I probably had the idea to be an engineer in the first place. They're both very successful business people. They're not in the same industry as me. They're but they have been a huge influence and mentor throughout my whole life. And so always having good guidance and good professional development information for me. And I think at every job I've had the opportunity to be blessed, and now even more so with the podcast. But at my first architecture and engineering consulting firm job out of after my first role out of college, there was a couple of professional engineers, Leanne Osman and Jason Elliott. These are two registered fire protection engineers, and they taught me what it means to be an engineer and the basic building blocks of the craft, and really helped me get the reps in. And now at the new company I work at, Rated Engineering, I have Brandon Wilkerson and Dom Noel, and these guys are just excellent businessmen and fire protection engineers and the full package of a professional. And so I get to lean on their insight and their knowledge about the industry. And, I think that mentorship piece is so important because there are some things that you're just not going to know as a young professional or any professional. Like, you're going to get into situations in which you don't have the resources to figure out the answers. And having a community, having a mentor is such a big deal because you can, not only get answers and information from them, but you can give back to that relationship as well and reciprocate and, kind of build a really good rapport that lasts a lifetime. And so, I think finding a mentor in your career and you facilitating that relationship and leaning in on people and community is such a big deal.
Thank you, Gus. That was our last questions. It was really great meeting you and getting to know you. And we wish you good luck with the fire tech code.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being on the show. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy.